Let me tell you something. If you ever make me watch a bad movie again,
Then what?
you figure it out.
Okay. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Virus. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Laramy Wells, and joining me today in the co-host chair is a double threat duo. First off, from Pop Culture Roulette, please welcome Nicholas Pepin.
When you have a bad movie, you call me and I show up.
Look, it's nothing personal. It just happens. Plus, you pick some of these.
That is true. I do willingly sign up for it. So,
and also from Interview with a Horror Virgin, it's James Brooks.
Hey guys, there's no such thing as a bad movie in my eyes. It's everything's entertaining.
Yeah. This one's going to be interesting because as we were setting this up, James made it abundantly clear that this is actually a movie he enjoys.
It's guilty pleasure.
So this is going to be a fun episode. So we are talking about the 1999 movie Virus, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and not Alec Baldwin.
That's so mean.
So something new that I want to do with this one, for anybody who maybe hasn't ever seen the movie Virus, just to give you a quick little synopsis. A salvage crew discovers a Russian research vessel which has been taken over by an alien entity. The crew must fight for survival against deadly alien creations while trying to find a way to destroy the alien presence. And that sentence sounds so much better than what we got.
yes. And more coherent than what we got.
Yeah. So, this was something I just wanted to go ahead and get into. This movie, for anybody, again, who has never seen this movie, if you have seen the movie Event Horizon, it's a better version of this movie. If you have seen the movie Sphere, it's still a better version of this movie. If you saw the movie that just came out a year before it called Deep Rising, starring Treat Williams, it's a better version of this movie. Do y'all agree, disagree on that?
I mean, some of those movies to say it's a better version is stretching it, but you're probably not wrong.
I have to agree with the Event Horizon as well.
As a diehard Michael Crichton fan, the movie Sphere always bothered me because of how much better the book is.
Oh yeah.
So
that's a confusing movie.
Yeah, because they did not follow the book at all, and that was Anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about.
Nope. But yeah, Queen Latifah being killed by jellyfish would be more interesting. All right, so the movie came out January 15th of 1999. When did y'all first see it?
January something of 1999.
Really, you saw it in theaters?
Yes, I did.
What was that experience like? I mean, I've been in a theater by myself before, so.
There was a couple friends of mine and I that they wanted to see it, and so I went and saw it with them. And I just remember walking out going, "Why?"
Yeah.
And then I forgot about the movie until a couple months ago when you had me watch it for
the worst movie
bracket, and so I watched it then, and I was like, "Oh, now I remember why I didn't like this movie." And then I chose to watch it 2 more times to do this episode. So,
hey, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
All right. Well, for me, mine was by accident because Sci-Fi Channel always is like a Russian roulette. You don't know what's about to happen because, before, like TiVo and all that, where you could kind of scan ahead to see like, okay, what's coming up. I didn't have that. It was just a gamble. It came on. It had my attention. I saw the robots, and as a kid or young teen, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Donald Sutherland, Jamie Lee Curtis. And then now as I look back at it, I'm about to say, it doesn't make any sense, but as a kid, it was just, fun popcorn entertainment. Kind of like Leviathan.
Yeah, that's another one that came out around this time that's roughly the same movie. I think with me, I honestly can't remember, but I think it was back when I had like Dish, and it was one of the like free weekends for, Showtime or HBO or something. And I recorded because I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Because I actually had so in college, I used to go to like the movie theater or Blockbuster, movie gallery, even back when y'all remember when Kroger had a video rental.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
place and
yeah.
stuff? Yeah. So I used to go to those and ask, hey, do you have any posters you're getting rid of? And they would give me posters. I actually had a poster for this movie hanging up in my dorm, but I had never seen it. And then I finally, like I said, finally watched it, I think, after college when I was just recording anything off of, those free weekends. And I think that was the first time I saw it. But tell me this, talking about the poster, and I'm sure y'all know which poster I'm talking about, the one that almost looks like the poster of Sphere, where it's got both Jamie Lee Curtis and William Baldwin's faces on it, and then it's got this bolt firing down into what I guess is supposed to be the water. Did you think, just by the poster alone or before you saw this movie, did you think it was a space movie?
I honestly don't remember what my thought on this movie was before I went and saw it. I think that my friends that wanted to see it, we were seeing it solely based on Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Sutherland, and William Baldwin. Like, we were like, yeah, it's got those guys in it. It has to be good.
Yeah, it must be. Where could it go wrong?
Oh, God. Famous last words. I mean, when I first saw it, I honestly thought it was like, again, my predictions as a young kid when I would see the poster were way, way off. I thought it was like a Matrix type hacking film when I saw it. I honestly did.
But this was before The Matrix.
Yeah, but I meant like I watched it afterwards and I hadn't even seen The
Yeah.
Matrix yet. But I guess I saw the two eyes on it, and I remember seeing like some pictures on the internet of like, The Matrix. So I thought like, oh, is it like a hacking film or whatever?
Yeah, they definitely imply that it's way more space than it was, and I'm not sure that alien creature or whatever that is showed up at all in the movie.
Yeah. So for I pulled up a picture of the poster that I'm talking about just to refresh their memories. I also love Donald Sutherland's name is at the top of the poster, but he's nowhere to be seen on the poster. Yeah, I don't know about that figure there too, but it was definitely, as James is saying, it definitely had that 90s robot look to it. Yeah, I don't know. But it's probably known by several people that this movie did not do well. I did find out it was originally planned for an August of 1998 release. They even have posters where it said on August 1998 it will arrive or something. Like, they had teasers for it. And you know what? August makes sense because it really is kind of a summer action horror movie. And it works for August because there's the tie-in with the typhoon, the hurricane, and that's prime hurricane season. So I think that could have worked. But nope, they moved it to January, the month that no movie wants to be released.
Yeah, it's the dumping ground for we know this movie is garbage, and we got to try to get some money back for.
Yeah, I've actually got this on Blu-ray. According to one of the interviews, according to one of the interviews with the director, he talked about at a test screening, there were several of the cards that they were looking over where someone wrote, this movie is da bomb. And apparently the Universal executives didn't know that was a good thing. So they're thinking they said this movie is a bomb, like it's bad. Although I will say this, when you watch these interviews, there's like 3 different interviews on the Blu-ray. You can tell they are trying to come up with reasons why this movie should be respected a lot more than it is. So I don't know how much truth there is to that story.
Sounds like a reverse Mystery Science Theater 3000 where they're actually trying to up the film and hype it for people instead of, pick it apart.
Yeah, because Jamie Lee Curtis has actually said this is the worst movie she's ever made.
Oh, poor girl.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, how did they get Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Sutherland for this?
So they got Jamie Lee Curtis because the director, who is John Bruno, he's a special effects guy. I mean, this guy won an Oscar for The Abyss for visual effects. He's worked a lot with James Cameron. He worked on Terminator 2, and then he worked on True Lies with Jamie Lee Curtis. And the story goes is that when they were shooting the stunt, the effect, whatever you want to call it, of where Arnold Schwarzenegger sets off a bomb and then dives into the water, Jamie Lee Curtis actually turned to John Bruno and said, why don't you write something for me like that? Then when he got this script, he called her and he said, hey, you remember when you asked me about the whole jumping into the water from an explosion and all? I have the movie for you. And that is why she agreed to do it.
Oh.
She trusted him, as I heard it.
I'm going to assume she never did that again.
Nope. In fact, she actually tried to get him fired.
Oh, no.
And actually wanted to get a different director, but the director she wanted was wrapped up in another movie. I can't remember who the director was, but yeah. But no, this guy, like I said, John Bruno, huge visual effects guy. I found out he also worked on Ghostbusters, and he was a consultant for Titanic. I did find out he is not officially the visual effects supervisor on Titanic because he couldn't do Titanic because he chose to direct this movie. But he is still listed as a visual effects consultant in the credits because he had done some work with James Cameron as part of the movie. But he's also done the Avatar movies and will continue to be the visual effects guy for the Avatar movies. So he's very successful as a visual effects artist.
Yeah, I looked through his IMDb when I was watching it the second time, and I was like, good for him for figuring out what you're not good at and then going right back to what you were. Cause...
Yeah. Did you by chance see what his previous directing credits are?
I probably did. I remember going, there's a reason why he's not directing anymore and he's just doing visual effects.
Yeah. So before this, he directed one of the segments of Heavy Metal. So another comic book related thing, but and he directed the T2 3D experience movie at Universal Studios.
Oh, that's awesome. I loved that ride as a kid. That was so much fun.
That's basically just taking the movie and turning it into a ride, though, so he didn't really have to direct much.
Well, he directed it, and then he got a major motion picture.
This is kind of like Stan Winston. Great, not so great with Pumpkinhead, but went back to what he was doing before because he was good at that.
We'll get into the comic that this is based on a little bit later, but the movie, to help make it into a movie, they brought in writer Dennis Feldman, who had previously written The Golden Child. Where that humor was in this movie, I don't know.
And Species, which was, completely non-existence in this movie.
All right, well, let's talk about the characters a little bit. This is why I wanted to wait and talk about the comic later, because 3 of the characters are kind of based off of the comic, and the rest are made up entirely for the movie. So first, we've got Kelly Kit Foster, played by Jamie Curtis. Clearly the Ripley character, because this is so trying to steal from Alien and Aliens. The character in the comic is named Colleen Foster, so they just still use the last name. But that's really it. She's not even really the main protagonist of the comic. She's kind of second to the male protagonist, which you would think would be William Baldwin's character, but it's not the same name. He's not even the same type of character. But yeah, William Baldwin played Steve Baker. For those of you who don't know who William Baldwin is, he is not Alec. He's the he's the third Baldwin. There's Alec, then Daniel, then William, or Billy. Some people call him Billy Baldwin.
What about Steven?
Steven's the fourth one. Yeah, Steven's the Biodome one.
Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. Biodome.
Yeah. Then our other big name playing Captain Robert Everton, Donald Sutherland, who is trying to do a Norwegian Irish accent.
Yeah, I could not figure out what the accent was supposed to be, and he wasn't super consistent with it.
No, he was not. Yeah, his character, name different, Captain Powell in the comic, but their motivations are kind of the same, so I guess it's supposed to be the same character. But I will say this. We've kind of alluded to this already. I want to go ahead and ask y'all about Captain Everton. Does anything he does make any sense whatsoever?
Nope.
None.
Not at all.
At no point did it make any sense, his motivation or his desire to do what he wanted to do.
Even right off the bat, to find out that, he doesn't want them to cut out the barge that they're hauling because he hasn't put insurance on it. And so if they lose it, they lose everything. And I'm going, why wouldn't you put insurance on it? And that, the line that we used for our cold open, he'd rather kill his crew than lose the cargo.
Yeah, it was like his entire motivation was to just be the bad guy from the first thing he said.
Yeah.
It was weird because you see like that opening scene and then all of a sudden it takes a hard left turn. When you see him in his cabin with the gun, I'm like, hold on a second.
That's the other thing. Like him being suicidal, I get it. Okay, he's lost everything. But like to me, that had nothing to do with his character.
Yeah, I have to agree because he just had like this whole entire journey throughout the movie just going up and down of...
No, there was no journey. No character had a journey in this movie.
I say journey in quotation marks then.
There was no character arcs. There was no character development. There was barely characters in this movie. So I guess the only thing that making him suicidal made any sense was him being willing to get an upgrade from the alien later, which also still doesn't make any sense. So he makes the deal with the aliens and they turn him into a cyborg. What does he gain from this deal? Like, what does he get out of it? Because I'm pretty sure they would have converted him into a cyborg regardless.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I have to agree because I also kind of found it odd how he still had his cognitiveness, how he was cognitive and sentient, even though he was still like hooked up in a cyborg compared to the other crew member who was like, almost a monster.
Was the idea that the crew wouldn't realize he was a cyborg? Because, he says the line, he was like, oh, you didn't recognize me, or whatever the line he says when he... Like, was it supposed to be that they were supposed to not know he was a cyborg so he could infiltrate the... I didn't
the human race.
I didn't get it.
On a very long extension cord, mind you.
Yes, which is something we're going to talk about later as well. Yeah, I don't know. So the only other character that's in the movie that's from the comic is Richie. In the movie, he's Richie Mason. In the comic, he's just Richie, and that's Sherman Augustus, which I kept looking at him going, what else do I know him from? And ended up finding out that he was Colonel Sullivan in season 4 of Stranger Things. I was like, that's got to be what I know him from. So he's the guy, he's the African-American guy that goes crazy towards the end and just wanting to blow everything up and shoot everything. But like I said, that character's in the comic, although he's Asian in the comic. But yeah, that was it. The rest of the cast, it is just character actors for the sake of stereotypical characters in this movie.
Beautiful. I love it. I meant I say I love it, but it's just one of those where it's like it's so bad when you see the characters come out, because it really was. You could already tell who was who the moment you saw them.
Yeah, you got Squeaky, which that's the only name they ever give him, is Squeaky, played by Julio Machoso, who anyone who recognized him may have recognized him as Detective Ruiz from Bad Boys. Although, me being a big fan of Grindhouse, I recognized him as the dude who gets killed at the beginning of Planet Terror. So
yep, I remember
that's
that
what
one.
I recognized him from. Yeah, but he's there to be the first kill. Then we've got Nadia, the Russian scientist that is a stowaway on the ship, played by Joanna Pacula, who I immediately recognized from Tombstone. She was Doc Holliday's love interest in that movie. We have J.W. Woods, played by Marshall Bell, who I'm sure James recognized as Coach Snyder from A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Oh, yes.
I mean, he's kind of one of that guys. Like, he's just been in so
That's
much.
all of these characters. That's why I said they're ones that you went, I've seen you in something.
It's like Dick Miller. You see Dick Miller in everything.
And probably the biggest one of I've seen you in that is Hiko, played by Cliff Curtis, who more recently was Mac in the Meg movies, both the first one and the second one. He was Travis on Fear the Walking Dead. And I mentioned this movie already. He was in Deep Rising just a year before. You know, the similar movie, but instead of an electrical alien, it's a sea monster.
Another great movie. It's supposed to have a tie-in to King Kong, but we won't get into that.
Oh, dude, yeah. I don't think I like anything that stars Treat Williams. I'm just going to put that on the record. So,
I had a roommate in college that was obsessed with Treat Williams, so
yeah. I don't, I don't mean to speak ill, but I never thought he was a great actor.
You're telling me you didn't enjoy The Substitute?
No, I enjoyed The Substitute, but that was not Treat Williams. Treat Williams didn't come in until the sequels.
Oh, good point. All right.
Yeah.
Technicality.
Yeah. Hey, still works. All right. So I still got to ask the question as I always do. So of all of these characters, who do you want to see again, and who do you wish would receive an upgrade?
I'd like to see more Hiko. I like Cliff Curtis.
Absolutely.
Cliff Curtis is always he's tends to always be good in what he does. Like, I've enjoyed him, and he's always, very rarely does he ever get like a starring role, but he's always good as a good supporter. I would like to see much less of Everton, but Woods, Marshall Bell, like that guy was just. I wanted the anchor to hit him on the boat. Like, just such a whiner.
Yeah, he had to play the coward of the group.
Yeah, I have to agree as well. Cliff Curtis is great. I mean, like, I love the Meg. Thought it was great as well. And also Marshall Bell. Because when I was watching him during the virus, all I could do is just picture, I think the guy's name is General Owens from Starship Troopers. That's all I could just see him just like,
Oh, yeah, I forgot that he's in Starship Troopers.
He jumps out of a closet just screaming, yeah. And then the way he dies in Starship Troopers still makes me laugh to this very day.
Yeah, to me, he's the coach from... He's the really weird coach from A Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah, really. Very strange.
This is the second podcast this week that's referenced Nightmare on Elm Street 2 that had nothing to do with being on a podcast about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, hey, there's a lot of stuff in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
There's never a bad movie.
What's never a bad movie?
There's never a bad movie. Like I said before earlier.
You know what podcast you're on right now, right? You know what movie we're talking about in this podcast, right?
I know, but I'm like trying to like redeem it just like by a little bit.
So yeah, I will agree. I would have liked to see more of. I would like to see more of Hiko. I mean, you can't go wrong when you are a really good friend of. I always pronounce his first name wrong. Tamura Morrison, the guy that plays Boba Fett, because I found out that's who they wanted to play Hiko. But he was busy with another project, and so he recommended that they get Cliff Curtis. And so that is, to me, I'm just like, well, that's awesome. And then, yeah, he's great in this. I would like to see him do more, just in general. I'm actually going to say I could have done without William Baldwin. I think they should have made Jamie Lee Curtis more of the protagonist. If they're going to make her the Ripley character, she needed to be more of the main character.
Okay, I can agree with that because she did feel not so much like the damsel, but like somewhere stuck as like they needed a female character, so they just wanted to like put her there.
Do you think they were aiming for Alec and settled for William? Like they just were like,
isn't that what they always do?
Like it's just they put out a call. They needed a Baldwin brother, and the wrong one showed up to set. Like,
I don't know. This was right there in the 90s when they were trying to make William Baldwin
They were trying to make all four. I mean, well, Alec was already established, but I
Yeah,
mean,
Alec had it in the 80s.
Steven was, trucking along with some stuff in the 90s as
What was
well.
Daniel doing though?
I
Like,
think
has
he did.
Daniel ever been a lead actor?
I think he mainly did TV. Like, I think he did a
Yeah.
lot of TV.
But yeah, because William had Backdraft, I think was his first big, like he's the lead.
Right.
And then he had that. Did y'all ever see Fair Game that he did with Cindy Crawford?
Well, yeah, of course I did.
I didn't. I don't think I did. No.
I've actually never seen it either.
I was in college in the 90s. What do you think? Cindy Crawford does a movie? I'm not going to see that?
But yeah, so you had those two movies, and then they come out with Virus, and I think that kind of put an end to, maybe he's not the the lead guy that we were hoping he would be. So yeah, like I said, you got not Alec. That's who you got. No offense, dude, but you're not the Baldwin we're looking for.
You're not the Baldwin we deserve.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
All right, let's get into the moving panels. So this is where I really want to talk about the comics. So this was a comic book before it was a movie. However, Chuck Farr, who wrote the comic book, actually wrote it as a screenplay first and pitched it to Universal. Did y'all know that?
No.
No, I did not.
So he wrote it as a screenplay. He pitched it to Universal. Universal turned it down. And he said, okay, well, you know what? His thought was, it's early 90s. It's going to be hard to make this into a movie because special effects weren't quite up to doing something like this yet. Although I would have actually probably thought it would be better in the early 90s with maybe like stop motion instead of the CGI they use at the end. Instead, he went to Dark Horse Comics and he published it as a comic book. It was 4 issues released starting in 92. I think it bled into 93. But it's only 4 issues. It's a quick read if you can ever find it. But found out some interesting stuff about Chuck Farr. He was a former Navy SEAL.
Okay.
He actually wrote an autobiography titled Warrior Soul, The Memoir of a Navy SEAL. That came out in 2003, so this was after. But I also found out that he worked as either a consultant or a writer on the following movies. Y'all ready for this?
Yep.
He worked on Darkman. You ready for this one, Nicholas? He worked on Barbed Wire. He wrote the script for Barbed Wire.
Man, we are just covering Chuck Farr all over the place, aren't we?
Yeah.
I never saw Barbed Wire.
Consider yourself lucky.
Yeah. He worked on the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie Hard Target.
Okay, that one's not bad. I mean, it is what it is.
And the Richard Gere Bruce Willis film The Jackal.
That one was weird.
I think I would say The Jackal's a guilty pleasure for me. It's fun to see Bruce Willis as the bad guy.
I don't think I've seen Jackal either.
I saw it, but it's been a long time.
There's a lot of... I need to catch up on all these other films. I need to branch out from horror and maybe just buckle up and watch Barbed Wire because now I'm kind of interested.
I mean, you could just listen to the episode that me, Laramy, and Tim did, however long ago, and save yourself some time and effort.
That was the movie that won our worst comic book movie.
Okay, now I'm interested. I'm definitely going to have to go way back and check out this.
But the comic book was very successful. There was 100,000 issues sold, or over 100,000 issues sold of each issue. So it was very successful as a comic book. And so guess what? Universal went, hey, we want to make this into a movie. And so we got the movie. But the comic book, the artwork in the comic book was done by Howard Cobb. There's wasn't a lot that I could find on him other than he did do one issue of the Quantum Leap tie-in comic book in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, I would love to get a hold of that.
Oh, there was a tie-in comic? I didn't know that.
All right, let's start talking about some of the similarities this movie has to other stuff. So, James, you've read the 4 issues. You've read the comic, correct?
Yeah, I did. I did a brief glance of them, watched them, read them yesterday before we got started.
So you know that pretty much they stayed pretty true to the look of the creatures, the cyborgs, all the robotics from the comic to the movie.
To an extent, they did. I felt like they were going more with a the thing type theme with it. When you see like the whole different designs of the robots, monsters in there.
Oh, bringing the old Russian captain or whoever he was supposed to be, the first cyborg that they find, bringing him in, putting him on the table, opening him up, and then him jumping out at them. That was so the Thing.
It definitely was.
Absolutely just ripping that moment off from the Thing. Let me ask you this question. Especially the cyborgs, did they not give you a feel of the Borg from Star Trek?
Definitely. So much of like the Borg from... Because I wasn't a big like Star Trek... Well, I won't say I wasn't. My dad was a big Star Trek fan, and he taught me about the Borg and like how significant they were. So now when I've gone back and like watched the Virus at an older age, I have another appreciation for Virus.
I see it now.
Now that I've said it.
Now that you said it. I will say, the only credit that I can give this movie is that the practical effects of the robots and the cyborgs were not bad. No. They were pretty good.
Again, it helps when your director is a Oscar-winning visual effects guy.
Right. It's the CGI doesn't hold up. I mean, I don't know if it was just the limitations of the CGI in the 90s or the fact that this movie was just hot garbage. But I will say, like, I mean, for the practical effects, like I did enjoy that part,
which is like 98%. Like the only CGI they use is for the Goliath there towards the end, and of course them getting launched out the little rocket ejector seat thingamajigger.
Completely believable.
Which I will also argue that moment kind of reminded me of when John McClane launches himself out of the ejector seat at the end of Die Hard 2.
True.
Yes.
I thought you were about to make another Deep Rising reference with the jet ski and the explosion.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah. And then, of course, I also, I've already mentioned kind of the Event Horizon connection with the one ship finding the abandoned ship and then ending up stuck on the abandoned ship and everything going to chaos from there. I mean, it's the same premise, same get up.
They turn everything on and the ship comes back to life, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Then there's also, of course, Aliens. I mean, I couldn't help but Aliens with kind of that same idea, the going on to I know it's not a ship in Aliens, but they go to the space station on that planet that's, abandoned and they hadn't heard anything from. And we talked about the Woods character, Marshall Bell played. If he wasn't kind of a similar character to, my mind just went blank. Who would be the similar character in Aliens? What's his name? Bill Paxton.
Oh, Hudson.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that was the same character.
I can see it.
Of course, when we did the worst movie bracket, I got to watch a movie called Hardware. And yeah. And there's some similarities there, even with the look of the robot, I would say.
Yeah, that is true. There was.
Most people probably don't know what I'm talking about. Nicholas,
me included.
Nicholas had to suffer through that one. But yeah, there's a movie out there called Hardware that you could look into, and it's kind of a similar similar bit there. Is there anything else like this was that this is my biggest I think my biggest thing is this was such a cliche movie.
Oh, from beginning. It was.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know where the fault starts. Like, was it a bad script, or did the director just not know what he? I mean, because he was visual effects and not like a director. Like, he just was out of his depth. Like, I don't know where the problem starts, but it definitely started, and then it just snowballed.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, you can't just say like, well, like it was a bad script, because you can have a bad script and with better actors save it, kind of. It's just, I mean, Donald Sutherland and I feel like because he wasn't a director or wasn't like a big director,
yeah,
like Donald Sutherland just showed up and said, and he's like, well, I don't want you to do that. He's like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm Donald Sutherland.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely.
And then Jamie Lee Curtis was trying to get him fired, so she probably wasn't necessarily playing along.
Yeah, I really think of the three leads, like William Baldwin was trying, and Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Sutherland were not. That's my thought.
I think so too. Maybe, I don't know. When I was rewatching it again, I feel like Donald Sutherland was like trying to do some character depth. I say that very loosely with the captain, but with the dialogue, he just couldn't do it. Like, immediately going back to his opening line.
I think anything you got out of Donald Sutherland was just because he's Donald Sutherland. Like, he's just a natural, actor. I really don't think he was trying, though, to make this movie any better than it was on paper.
Yeah, I don't. Were those his real teeth, or did they throw some? Because those were maybe just because this is the third time in the last like 6 to 9 months that I've watched this movie. They were really bothering me, like the third time around. I was just like, those can't be real. Like, maybe the accent was I don't know. I couldn't figure out what he was doing, and I'm like, in everything I've ever seen. I mean, he's just done so much that not everything can be good. Like, he's gonna do bad stuff.
Yeah,
but he, generally speaking, has done so much good that you're like, what is he doing? Like, how
did you end up here?
Well, just the fact that, again, Jamie Lee Curtis has gone on record saying this is the worst. She called it a piece of, explicit that we won't say on the show. She has called it that. And this is the same woman who made Halloween H2O and Christmas with the Cranks. So
sounds like Betsy Palmer with Friday the 13th.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know where the problem starts, but it definitely, none of it helped. And it just culminated in whatever that was.
Yeah, and again, you could go off the comic, because again, it was originally written to be a screenplay, then it was turned into a comic, but they changed so much. So there's no opening about how the alien arrived. We do find out later into the comic how it got there. And in the comic, all it is and it's Chinese, not Russian in the comic. This Chinese ship is sending messages into space. Like, that's actually what they're doing. They are trying to connect with, an alien life form. And then this message comes in as a data file. And when they open the data file, that's when the virus releases. And it actually is a virus. Like, they call it. That whole twist where in the comic, it is clear virus is referring to the alien life form. Whereas in this movie, the virus is apparently humans. And the aliens are trying to destroy that they are the virus. Yeah, I just didn't get it. But the tug being imperiled by the storm, that's the same. However, in the comic, they blow up the cargo. Like, they blow it up. They completely go against the captain and they blow it up, which I think makes a heck of a lot more sense than what happens in the movie of it just ending up breaking off on its own. And I think it helps with character development too.
I will admit I did like that in the comics because there was more peril in it instead of, awkward dialogue and, weird reasonings for it because they like do the whole I forgot what they threw. I know it wasn't like propane. It was kind of like a Jaws moment. He threw like a canister on the other side, shot it with a gun, and then
shoots it with a
shoots
it with a flare gun.
Excuse me, and then it just explodes. So a lot more interesting than I don't have insurance.
But again, it helps with that character development too, about how that at least that main character, who was called Avril, I think was his name in the comic, how he is completely going against the captain, which again is supposed to be the William Baldwin character, but when the William Baldwin character ever confronts the captain, he just goes, "Yeah, I'll don't do that because you figure out what I'll do."
Yeah.
There's a little thing. The tugboat, for some reason, they gave it a different name. It's Sea Star in the movie. It was called the Electra in the comic. Now, I did like this. In the comic, you do find out that the Chinese researchers actually were able to get a message back home to let them know what has happened. And so there is a moment in the comic where the Chinese have sent a jet to attempt to sink the ship. And they fire 3 missiles at the ship. The first one actually hits the ship. But then we discover that the alien was able to send out a program through the satellite that actually defused the bomb, prevented it from exploding. So it does make a big hole in the ship, but it doesn't explode. And then the other 2 missiles are actually reprogrammed so that they turn back around and they actually blow up the jet. And where was that in the movie? Because I don't care. Make it Russian, but that would have been great as well.
Yeah, a lot of missed opportunities.
I will say, though, it kind of ruins the whole they have to be wired in, because the implication is that the aliens can't get off the ship because I guess they kind of explain it with the satellite being down. That they can't transmit, even though they do it at the beginning of the movie, but they can't transmit. There's no Wi-Fi, I guess I should say. And so they have to be wired in, which James brought up earlier. The whole fact that all of the robots and cyborgs have this wire connected to them, there are no remote controlled, is so weird, especially with the fact that it's also inconsistent. And we see that right off the bat with the first cyborg, the one I mentioned earlier about the Russian captain who was turned into a cyborg. They lay him down on the table. They hold up the cable, showing that they have severed it. And yet he still moves. He still gets up. He still tries to attack them. We even get when his skull comes out as a whole different kind of creature. So he can work remotely. So I don't understand how these cyborgs work at all, if they can work without having to be plugged in.
Yeah, I have to agree, because I felt like even in like some parts of it, I guess they were like trying to make it out like they were remote control maybe, but I don't think the point was there. And they wanted to just focus on they couldn't go anywhere with the cable. But yeah, that whole scene with the captain just, having that one final scare and then all of a sudden just falling back down. It's just a little bit of inconsistency.
I think we sum it up by just going, magic.
Kind of the way we usually say, because comics.
Yeah.
But I don't think that ever happens in the comic. I think because in the comic, they specifically make note of they have to cut off the cable that's attached to them.
Yeah, and you actually see more monsters too.
It's like shooting the zombie. You got to aim for the head. With these, you got to cut that cable.
It sounds like that we should get a bigger budget kind of remake of this story, but like closer to the actual book.
Nope. I'll go ahead and say this, and James, you can speak on it too. After I sat and read the book, which again, it's not a long read. It didn't take me long. But I read it in kind of the same way I felt with the movie. I just kind of went, eh. Like,
No, all right.
I have to agree because like there were some cool moments. I guess what I liked about it, I love the creatures that were in there, but I wish we could have seen something similar to that. But seeing the other stuff not being translated well, or just like some of the lazy designs, I was like, you know what, the comic is decent, but then you see the movie and it's like the movie's just, you know, the movie is bad, but. At least in the comic, they were making an effort with, like, you know, trying to show you some of the grotesques. I still love the flying cyborg. That one was my favorite.
But there's still no. Oh yeah, and then like the female crew member, because there is another female crew member in the comic. Her cyborg climbing up the satellite to try to repair it. Like that to me would be a freaky little moment in a live action thing, but yeah, there's no character development in the comic either. So that's definitely from the source material, and they just weren't able to do anything about it with the actual movie. The other big difference is the ending. So in the comic book, they still blow up the ship. However, they're in this one, they're found in the comic, they're found by another ship. We don't have the helicopter bit. Which let me talk about the helicopter. Another cliche thing. So flying off in the helicopter, they are flying towards the sunset. Y'all caught that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're in the Pacific Ocean. So if they are flying towards the sunset, they are headed to Russia.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I would like to point that out. I don't know who picked them up but they are headed towards Russia. Just wanted to mention. But in the comic, we get a final panel of a floppy disk floating in the water. I guess to imply that the virus has downloaded itself onto a 3.5 floppy, which early 90s, I don't know how a 3.5 floppy is containing that entire alien life form or surviving in the water for that matter.
Salt water, mind you.
Yeah, I'm honestly shocked this movie didn't end. I mean, it had the terrible dream sequence twist ending.
You mean that they stole from Friday the 13th?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in a movie that was just stupid. Like, that was just like icing on the stupid cake. Like, it was just like, we've made this perfectly stupid cake. Let's put some, like, a cherry on it with this really stupid dream sequence. I expected some sort of like wink or a nod, like the helicopter or the ship they were on at the end, like to have like a virus, like, you know, like a screen blank or something, so you'd be like, oh, did it make it or did it not? You know.
Yeah.
But no, they you know.
Or even a shot going back into, like, I don't know how much of the ship was maybe still floating or whatnot, but maybe you know, whereas the comic showed a floppy disk, maybe in the movie you show a monitor floating in the water, and then it turns on. You just see the little cursor blinking or something.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah.
What did y'all think about the fact that they just go, hey, let's see if we can communicate with it, and sit down and start typing to it on a computer?
I mean, I guess comics.
But that's not a comic thing, though. That was a movie thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess because Nadia, like, had already figured out where it came from and, like, told them, like, they at least had some sort of, if you want to stretch the logic or try to put logic where the movie didn't, like, because they had Nadia explain stuff to them, like, maybe they had more of an understanding of what they were dealing with. So that they knew they could, like, talk to it. They knew it was computer-based somehow. But I don't. I think I'm giving it too much credit.
Oh, yeah. Most positive things you might say about this movie would be giving it too much credit.
I'd have to agree. I mean, like, I guess maybe not magic, I won't say, with the computer. Like, communicating, maybe just some really rushed exposition, just like, oh, let's hurry up and communicate with it, or why?
So talking about that, so in the comic book, the alien is the virus, and it does as a virus does. It wants to spread. That is its whole purpose. There's nothing deeper there. It just wants to exist and to spread like a virus. The movie, I think, is trying too hard to make a message about the way we live, about how humans are destroying the planet, maybe even about our selfish mindsets, and to turn the whole thing where the alien says you are the virus, and that they are trying to to destroy you because they're looking at you as the villain. I think it's trying. I think if you just left it at this is an alien creature that is trying to take over, I think that would have been just fine. Trying to give it a message didn't work.
Yeah, they were going a little too. They got like too convoluted with it. You should just made the title just what it was: virus. What was it? An alien entity that invaded our computer system, like how we have viruses today. Simple. We don't need this whole. You're the virus. This whole weird like Planet of the Apes type thing or whatever.
Nicholas, anything?
No, I can't add anything else to this.
That is how this movie works. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. Our final decision: bag it, stack it, or trade it. I will let Nicholas go first on this one.
Gee, I wonder. I think I'm gonna bag. No, I'm gonna trade. I'm gonna trash it. I mean, trade it. Whatever.
Hey, it works.
Drop it in the trash can and never watch it. Hopefully, never have to watch this movie again.
All right, and then James, why don't you go ahead and tell us why you're gonna stack it? I really believe you're about to say stack it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say stack it. It's just a fun guilty pleasure film. What I guess I loved about the film was the Goliath, because when I see the comics, the Goliath in the comics is so underwhelming, but at least in Virus it was something cool. It looked like a Goliath. So I'm going to stack it because, put it up there with my Deep Star 6 and my Leviathan.
So my thing about you calling it a guilty pleasure is that in order for it to be a guilty pleasure, there has to be pleasure in watching it. And I find none. So it is a trade it for me because this movie is just so dull. It takes almost an hour into the movie before we get our first kill.
True.
It's 55 minutes. 55 minutes into the movie before we get our first kill. And for a movie that's really trying to be a sci-fi horror movie. And 55 minutes. We've already talked about, yes, the visual effects work. I'll give it a positive. The visual effects work. They still hold up for the most part. I'm not as against the CGI as Nicholas was. And the fact that most of it's practical, I think the CGI is fine, considering it's a 90s movie. But yeah, you can't... Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Sutherland can't do anything with these characters. Whether it was because they just didn't have interest or whether it was just how badly it was written. They just can't do anything with the characters. As I've mentioned throughout the show, it's extremely cliche. Aliens disapprove of humans and want to exterminate them. It's like all these other movies we've talked about. But I also want to end this by asking a question. What kind of movie is this, though? Is it a slow burn thriller? Because it does, like I said, it takes a while to get going. We get a lot of lead up before things actually start going down. Is it meant to be a gory horror film? Because we do get a lot of that gore out of the cyborgs. Or is it trying to be like Aliens and be even more of an action movie? Like, what kind of movie is this?
I don't think it knows.
Yeah. I think that's one of the problems.
I have to agree as well. It's just a big swirling pot of just like, what do you want to do?
Because even with a movie like we've talked a good bit about it being connected to like Event Horizon. Even with Event Horizon having a little bit of exposition at the beginning to kind of lead up to get... Once they get there, it immediately starts. This movie just seems to take forever. And it's just, again, it and the comic. I don't recommend either one of them. I don't know if, James, you have different thoughts about the comic, but I would not even recommend someone sit down and read the comic.
I have to agree. Like I said, there were some cool moments in it, but it wasn't enough to keep me invested. Cool creature designs, but again, everything else seemed very bland. Everyone's wearing white shirts, which I thought was odd as well.
Everything's is odd. But there you have it. There is a movie that clearly did deserve to be on our worst comic book movie bracket a few months ago. There is Virus. You can't find it streaming anywhere, probably for good reason. You can probably catch it online somewhere where someone's uploaded it, but yeah,
I mean,
it's on Sling.
I'm not gonna say that I didn't pirate it, but I'm not gonna say that I did either. So,
well, I will again point out I have it on Blu-ray. So
yeah, I will say I had a colonoscopy last Friday,
and that was more interesting.
That was less painful than watching this movie.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah. Probably had a better story arc too.
He didn't have to take the cable with him.
So. But yeah, again, if you are a fan of Virus, then more power to you. And if you've never read the comic, I would say if you do like the movie, sure, read the comic to see the connection, especially if you didn't even know it was based on the comic. But yeah, don't go out of your way. Again, this is a trade it all the way around. I do own the trade back, which I have sitting right here with me. But it's going to end up on my shelf and probably never get touched ever again. So there you have it. All right. Well, thanks, Nicholas and James, for joining me on this one. I will still ask, though, did you enjoy it?
I think I enjoyed the conversation that we just had.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Way more than I enjoyed either of the 3 times that I've watched the movie.
I've enjoyed all of this. These are always just fun things to talk about. Something's never, to me, 100% bad. There has maybe like 1 or 2 redeeming things. I can live with that.
Yeah, but again, you haven't watched Barbed Wire, so let's see what you have to say after you watch Barbed Wire. All right, thanks everybody. We are about to get into the month of March, to where we are going to talk all month long about Watchmen and going into that deep dive and finishing out our several months of Alan Moore. But we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for moving panels today. I kind of screwed up my own ending, but there you go. Just like the movie Virus. For today, for Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.